Welcome, champions, to the next overview and tier list ranking, featuring any new or reworked champion for the active current event for idle champions. This is where we'll break down their mechanics and place them in my overall tier list for every champion in the game. And before we fully dive in, I gotta shout out the Twitch channel, where you can come say hi to my cat, or, come say hi to me, where we talk about the champions the same day I release this video, and whatever other shenanigans we might be getting into. This event, we have a newcomer to the Fallbacks affiliation, and a reworked goblin coming next week. So let's dive right on into Baldric, the lawful neutral dwarf cleric who serves the formation as a healing and support. His base attack will bring him up to the closest enemy and deal 1 hit. His ultimate will have him ignite his mace in radiant light, preventing champions from being stunned and empowering his attacks for the duration it's aflame. As he is a part of the Fallbacks affiliation, he of course has Uggy, the passive where Uggy joins the party, starting next to Baldric unless she's already in the formation next to another Fallbacks champion. Uggy increases the damage of all non-adjacent champions and is scaled not only by Tess but now by Baldric as well, through his formation ability, Undeniable Uggy, where he will directly increase the buff of Uggy, which also scales with his equipment. But through his formation abilities, his main source of damage buffing is through Bargaining Power, where Baldric's bargaining partners are Fallbacks champions and/or champions with a charisma score of 15 or higher. Baldric increases the damage of his bargaining power partners for each bargaining partner in the formation, stacking multiplicatively. And this does scale pre-stackatively. So the idea is to have as many bargaining partners slotted in your formation as possible. Now for his healing role, he has a couple of formation abilities. As he is a healer, of course, he has a healing ability, Healing Word, where he heals the champions in the columns in front of him. Now this is a pretty standard heal, so we're not looking at anything crazy here, but he does have other methods of saving your formation and boosting his healing. With Shield of Filth, when Uggy is with Baldric, any champion that is being targeted by Baldric's Healing Word cannot take more than 33% of their maximum health in 1 hit. So this is now a new method to survive in the later areas where everyone would otherwise be being one-shot. And with Healing Lantern, when any champion drops to or below 50% of their maximum health, Baldric lights his lantern for the rest of the current area, and all healing received by champions in the formation is increased for each healing champion in the formation, stacking multiplicatively. But again, this will have limited utility, as the heal itself isn't going to be that potent. So scaling it through this method isn't going to give the heal itself enough to really keep up. Now do note, once this procs, it does increase all healing, so there is that at least. Now let's talk about his specializations, which are actually rather unique. He has 2 different sets of specialization picks, and the first choice will affect the second choice. So let's go over the first. To begin with, he has Bargain with Tier, where Baldric increases the pre-stack bonus of bargaining power by 50%. Bargain with Moradin, where you may use any dwarf champion in the current adventure, even if the patron, variant, or restriction would say otherwise. Additionally, dwarf champions will count as Baldric's bargaining partners for bargaining power. Bargain with Tymora, where Baldric gains the gold find roll and increases the party's gold find for each bargaining partner, stacking multiplicatively. Additionally, champions with the gold find roll also count as Baldric's bargaining partners. Now, unfortunately, there's no way to scale his specializations, so even with a formation full of gold finders, his gold find itself is actually really bad. Bargain with Mistra, where Baldric's base attack also deals 5 seconds of Bud base damage and counts as a magic attack. Additionally, champions with a magic base attack also count as Baldric's bargaining partners. And lastly, Bargain with Eldath, where Baldric increases the effective Healing Word by 100%. Additionally, champions with the healing role also count as Baldric's bargaining partners. So there's a lot of utility to choose from here. Either flat damage increase, availability with dwarves, or ways to add to your bargaining partners. Now, his second set of specializations is a bit unique in that you will have one option of a dark bargain, or you can pick one of the previous bargains. The dark bargain you are offered depends on which bargain you took first. So there is a dark bargain for Tyr, Moradin, Tymora, Mystra, and Eldath. So for this section, I'm just going to go over every dark bargain that is a possibility in the second set of specializations. But remember, there's only going to be one dark bargain, and the rest of the bargains you did not pick. Tyr's dark bargain will have Baldric increase the pre-stack bonus of bargaining power by an additional 50%, but the effect of healing word is reduced by 99%. Moradin's dark bargain increases the damage of dwarf champions for each dwarf in the formation, stacking multiplicatively. But you may only have one of each non-dwarf species in the formation. Tymora's dark bargain will make bosses have a 10% chance to drop twice as many gems. But non-boss area quest requirements are increased by 100%. We'll go over this at the end and how important it may or may not be. Mystra's dark bargain will have all champions with magical based attacks deal an additional 5 seconds of bud-based damage with each attack, but all champions without a magical based attack no longer deal any damage with their base attacks. And Eldath's dark bargain will make champions immune to damage for 15 seconds after the first instance of damage that they would take in every area, including the damage that procs this. But afterward they will take 100% additional damage from all sources. So, just as a recap, if you want Tymora's dark bargain for the 10% chance to drop twice as many gems, you would have to, in the first set of specializations, take the bargain with Tymora, which is the gold find bonus. Now, what about his equipment and feats? His equipment is above average as he has a pre-stack, but overall other than that it's a little lacking. He has 2 global DPS buffs, one for bargaining power, which is the pre-stack, one for undeniable Uggy, for the fallbacks synergy, one for his healing word, which for a heal like that always feels like a bit of a waste, and ultimate cooldown. His feats are pretty average with a couple of exceptions. Of course you'll want to be using bargaining power feats, as those will affect the pre-stack. But he also has feats that further reduce how much damage your formation will take with his Shield of Filth. One rare to make it 20% instead of 33%, and one epic that is earned through the event that will reduce damage taken to 10% of the maximum health of a champion. This has the potential to very much increase your overall survivability. Now, what about his achievement and adventure variants? His achievement is actually rather simple. It requires you to finish an area of 200 or higher with each of his 5 dark bargains. So essentially, you just need to finish 5 adventures with different specialization picks. His first variant will have him start in the formation, where he can be moved but not removed, and only champions who have a charisma of 15 or higher and are not next to Uggy can deal damage. Fallbacks champions can always deal damage, regardless of their position or charisma. Overall, the only real restriction here is just to have a DPS with a charisma of 15 or higher and not be adjacent to Uggy. His second variant will have him start in the formation with his healing word ability unlocked. He can be moved, but not removed. A thrown mug hits a random champion every second, dealing 5% of their max health and damage. After area 125, this increases to 10%, and after area 350, this effect increases to 25%, and after area 800, it is 50%. The idea here is to rely on healing or damage negation mechanics. His third variant will have him start in the formation with his bargaining power ability unlocked, and he can be moved but not removed again. You may only use champions that count as one of Baldric's bargaining partners. So naturally, that means fallbacks champions, or charisma 15 plus champions, or you can use his specialization to include dwarfs, or gold find champions, magic base attack users, or healers. Overall, if you keep this in mind and make a plan based on those specializations, you should be okay. But this will be a highly restricted variant. Now, what about his availability? He's better than average, but nowhere near perfect. As he's neutral, he will never be available for Mert, and his dexterity is low enough that he will never be available for the Day 1 Dexterity Trials lockout. He is naturally locked out of Vajra, however he does have a feat to increase his constitution, unlockable within his event, that will allow him to be usable for Vajra. So, with feats considered, 1 Day 1 and 1 Patron lockout. Overall, his buffing is good but not great. He does have a pre-stack, but there's not that many ways outside of the pre-stack he scales that number up. So as far as pre-stacks go, it's on the lower end. His healing is about what you would expect from any other healer. However, he does offer the benefit of reducing the amount of damage champions take, so you can prevent one-shot mechanics without having to rely on someone like Miria or Krydle, or is at least just another champion within that bracket of champions. Now, what about that specialization that involves gem gains? That's always going to perk up some people when they hear a chance at more gems. Well, it is a 10% chance for double gems, so effectively a 10% increase. However, he increases the area requirements by 100%. Is that 10% gain enough to justify the increased requirement for completing areas? I can only speak as far as my personal testing goes, so absolutely sound off in the comments if you have a different experience. And that is, in general, no. Now, this is in regards to a Briv gem farm, and if we're talking about a BBEG-based team, it is a hard no. And in my personal 11 jump Dynahair-based gem farm, it also underperformed. Now, I've had limited amount of time to test before releasing this video, so maybe I had a string of bad luck. But there is also something important to mention here. However, it's going to require us to slip into the spoiler zone. We haven't been here in a while, and it's a minor spoiler, but it's worth talking about. We are very likely to receive a Diana Constitution Increased feat next month during the anniversary. This is important because initially, Briv gem farms were done in a Vajra variant. This changed when Diana released because she did not qualify for Vajra. Her speed was too important to not tag her along in a gem farm, so it moved on from a Vajra variant. However, with this Constitution feat, Diana will become available for Vajra variants. And it is important to note that every other member generally used in a gem farm already does qualify for Vajra, as will Baldric with his own Constitution feat. And the whole reason Vajra is important to be running with a speed team is because of a blessing which reduces area quest requirements during patron variants or free plays. Vajra was used because that is the broader availability and most speed champions qualified. With this in mind, using that reduction of quest requirements in tandem with the increase from Baldric, it might reduce it just enough to where something like an 11 jump Dynahair speed team will be able to get one tap progression in a gem farm, whereas using him you otherwise would not be able to. Alright, so a quick little recap. We've got a low end pre-stack, but still a pre-stack. We've got healing, which is always on the low end. However, he does have some formation life-saving mechanics. Good availability, but not the best. Low end gold find if you take him a gold find route. And the potential to be used for gem gains, but that is kind of questionable right now and will require further testing. For the time being, he is going in the B+, with the potential to move around depending on how things shake out. Now we need to cover the champions of this event and who you might want to flex slot. This is actually a pretty decent round of champions. Plenty who could actually benefit quite a bit from item levels, and others that you would want to be unlocked if you're just looking to unlock champions. Let's just go from top to bottom of my list here. To start, we have Beetle, who was just recently reworked and ultimately doesn't scale good with item level, other than the fact that he shares his item level with Grib. But ultimately, I wouldn't recommend it with the roster we have to work with this time around. Next up is Eliwick, who is an excellent target for some item levels, and is absolutely required for a gem farm. Someone who absolutely needs to be unlocked and benefits from item level investment, especially for her gold find. Then we have Ishi, who has also been somewhat recently reworked, and is a decent damage-dealing champion that has pre-stacks to scale with item level. Not a bad target if you want Ishii as a damage dealer. Then you have Jim, who is notable for having a good pre-stack for an Artemis team. Again, scales excellent with item level. Then we have Lae'zel, who again has a pre-stack, is a part of the ever-popular Absolute Adversaries, and is absolutely worth item level investment if you choose to use her. Then we have Omen, who is an excellent champion, but relies a little less on item level, so maybe not one to dump item levels into, even though he is a good champion. We have Prudence, who ultimately I would not recommend. She is someone who absolutely needs a rework in the future. We have Shandy, who is overall a good champion, absolutely worth an unlock if you're in the early stages of the game for her dash mechanic to increase game speed, but ultimately with the other options here, she's not necessarily one I would recommend dumping item levels into. And then we have Valentine, one of the overall best champions in the game, who is used in many, if not all of the top-end formations, and absolutely benefits from item level investment. And lastly, we have Veronica, who was also recently reworked, and while she is a good champion overall, she's not necessarily the best item level scaler. Overall, some good picks, and all comes down to what are you looking for. Thanks for dropping in. Be sure to check out next week when we cover La Zaps and her rework. Hit that like, sub, and bell for me. Stop on in and say hi during my Twitch streams. And as always, the most important thing ever out of anything, have a hell of a time out there, champion.